A woman in a hot air balloon realized she was lost. She lowered altitude and spotted a man in a boat below. She shouted to him, "Excuse me, can you help me? I promised a friend I would meet him an hour ago, but I don't know where I am." The man consulted his portable GPS and replied, "You're in a hot air balloon, approximately 30 feet above a ground elevation of 2,346 feet above sea level. You are 31 degrees, 14.97 minutes north latitude, and 100 degrees, 49.09 minutes west longitude." She rolled her eyes and said, "You must be a Republican." "I am," he replied, "but how did you know?" "Well," answered the balloonist, "everything you told me is technically correct, but I have no idea what to make of your information, and I'm still lost. Frankly, you've not been much help to me." The man smiled and responded, "Well, you must be a Democrat." "I am," replied the balloonist, "but how did you know?" "Well," said the man, "you don't know where you are or where you are going. You've risen to where you are due to a large quantity of hot air. You've made a promise that you have no idea how to keep, and now you expect me to solve your problem. You're in exactly the same position you were in before we met, but now somehow it's my fault." Well, Democrat or Republican, we are nearing the end of our quadrennial hot air season. November 8th is only 19 weeks away. The question I propose to answer this noon is simple. Is it possible to know today who will win? And here's the answer. Yes. It's been a pleasure. Enjoy the rest of Bill's program. So what I would like to do this noon is to identify several methods that presidential election forecasters have used with mixed success to predict the outcome of presidential elections. By the way, if you enter this search phrase in Google, presidential election models, you'll generate 1,910,000 hits. I'm not going to talk about all of them, but simply to give you the flavor of the state of election outcome modeling, let me list the names of some of them. The 538 model, the bio-index model, the issue index model, the bread and peace model, the bellwether state predictor, and the stock market predictor. There are also the post-convention bounce predictor, the ever closer to election day predictor, the candidate height model, the Halloween mask model, the weekly reader and scholastic election polls, the homemade cookie model, and the Washington Redskins predictor. Now, some of these models suggest causation, that A caused the presidential election outcome. For example, Emory University's Alan Abramovitz has developed a model that has predicted every outcome since 1992. It measures the incumbent president's job approval rating by the end of this month in the election year, so this year would be June 2016. It measures the economy's growth during the first half of this year and how long the incumbent party has been in the White House. By this methodology, the Democratic candidate can expect to receive 48.7% of the vote if President Obama's approval rating is 50% or lower. At the moment, that would translate to a Republican victory. Other models indicate a correlation rather than causation. So let's take the Redskins, the Washington Redskins predictor. Since the Redskins moved to the District of Columbia in 1936, when the team loses or ties its final game before Election Day, the party in the White House loses. This actually predicted every outcome of every race from 1936 through 2012 except once, in 2004. Now, the chance of the game results and election results matching up this often is 1 in 263.5 million. The average person is more than 2,600 times as likely to be killed by lightning. Still, if the Redskins lose when they play the Cincinnati Bengals at Wembley Stadium in London on October 30th, they actually have a bye on November 6th, that could put Donald Trump in the White House. But for my money, the best predictor is what's called the 13 keys. And I'll ask folks to pass out the 13 keys. You have them already? Okay. Here's what's essential to know about this model. First, the model has predicted the popular vote winner correctly in every presidential election since 1860. Not 1960, 1860. Remember, though, that presidents are elected not by the popular vote, but by the Electoral College vote, something that Al Gore remembers every day. Second, the model assumes that presidential elections are primarily referenda on how well the party in the White House has governed. There is little that the challenging party can do to influence the choice of an American president. In other words, the choice of a president does not turn on oratory, advertising, the choice of a running mate, testimonials, debates, endorsements, rallies, platforms, promises, policy stances, or virtually anything else that is said or done in a presidential campaign. Instead, this model asks you to keep your eye on the big picture. Watch for the consequential events that actually decide the outcome of presidential elections. Economic boom and bust, foreign policy success and failure, social unrest, scandal, and policy innovation. That's what the 13 keys measure: the performance, strength, and unity of the party holding the White House at the time of the election. This year, the Democratic Party. The purpose of these keys is to determine whether or not the Democratic Party this year has governed well enough to earn victory in November. So, how do you put these keys together for the 2016 election? If 6 or more of the 13 keys are unfavorable to the Democratic administration, the model would predict a Republican victory. So as we go through this list, if you see 6 or more of these unfavorable to the Democratic Party, the Republican candidate wins. And notice that the model doesn't care who the candidates are. It doesn't care how much money they have or raised. It's a referendum on the party, the governing party. So let's go through the keys. So you're looking at a sheet like this, and it has 2 columns on the right side. Is that true for the Democrats in 2016? So if you see 6 F's for false, that's trouble for the Democrats. And then there's a column that I've added for this year. I've done this model for 4 presidential elections. And that's the degree of certainty you have about your answer. So I'm giving you an opportunity to predict the outcome of the election. I know what the model author, how the model author evaluates these keys, but I'm not going to tell you that until the end. Okay, so key number 1 is called the party mandate key. And it says that after the midterm elections in 2014, the incumbent party, meaning the Democrats, hold more seats in the U.S. House of Representatives than it did after the previous midterm elections. Now, I know you've got that number just at the top of your head. The answer is false. So you would put an F in that box. And in the certainty, you can be absolutely certain that that key is an F. It will not change. Everybody with me? Key 2 is the party contest key. There is no serious contest for the incumbent party nomination. So that's the Democratic Party nomination. Do you believe that there was a serious contest in the Democratic primary? So that would be an F. That's not a true statement. There was a serious contest. And how certain are you of that? So here are two ways to look at it. And by the way, the author of this model has a whole book to define his terms pretty precisely. If you think the definition of serious is that the nomination is contested all the way through to the convention, you might answer one way. If you think it's serious enough that so many people felt the burn, then you would answer perhaps differently. And that would indicate to you how certain you are of your answer. So, how many people put F down there? Just raise your hand. How many put T for true? Okay. The third key is the incumbency key. The incumbent party candidate is the sitting president. Is Barack Obama the candidate? The answer is no. That's an F, and you can be absolutely certain that he's not a candidate. Now, most of you who raised a hand already have 3 Fs. So for the balance of the keys, you can only see 3 more if you want Hillary Clinton to win. Key number 4 is the third party key. There is no significant third party or independent campaign. Raise your hand if you believe that's a true statement and would put a T in the box. That is a true statement. Now, how certain are you that that true statement will hold for the balance of the campaign? I would put likely. I'm not absolutely certain. I'm not even strong in my opinion about that because there is still a window of opportunity. But a T makes sense at this point. Key number 5 is the short-term economy key. The economy is not in recession during the election campaign. Is that a true statement? The economy is not in recession. Raise your hand if you think that is a true statement. That is a true statement. There is a technical definition of recession, and we're not in one. And how certain are you that we won't enter a recession between now and the election? I would, for myself, say I'm strongly certain. I'm not absolutely certain, but I don't think it's likely that the economy will enter the technical definition of a recession in the next 19 weeks. So that's a T. I know you have this next one at the tip of your tongue too, the long-term economy key. Real per capita economic growth during the term, so the last 4 years, equals or exceeds mean growth during the previous 2 terms. That's true. The economy has actually expanded for 6.5 years. We've added jobs in 74 straight months. Few people feel that, but those are the facts. That is a T. So at almost the halfway point, you may differ a little bit, but we have 3 Fs and 3 Ts. 7 is a policy change key. And you'll notice that some of these keys are open to interpretation or subjective judgment. Others are plain facts. So key number 1 is a plain fact. Key number 3 is a plain fact. Now we get into some subjective judgments, and I'll explain how the model author qualifies some of these. Key number 7 is a policy change key, and it states that the incumbent administration effects major changes in national policy. Now, before you answer that, it's major changes in national policy in the current 3.5-year term. It's not Obamacare. It's not the stimulus. It's in the last 3.5 years. The incumbent administration effects major changes in national policy. Raise your hand if you think that's true. I'm not going to call on you, Randy, to suggest what the major change in national policy is, but I will anyway. Okay, that brings in this subjectivity. In the author's opinion, a major change in policy is something like the Civil Rights Act of 1964, Great Society legislation. In his opinion, nothing in the past 3.5 years qualifies. It's been more maintenance of policy initiatives begun in the first administration. So he would put an F down there, and his certainty is strong. There is not going to be major national policy change in the next 19 weeks. So that's an F. Now we're at 4 Fs. Key number 8 is the social unrest key. There is no sustained social unrest during the term. According to the model's author, that's true. His definition of social unrest would be the civil rights demonstrations in the 60s or the Vietnam War protests. Occupy Wall Street does not qualify. Black Lives Matter does not qualify. Doesn't reach the critical mass he would use to turn that key to an F. So that would be a true. There is no sustained social unrest. Has a pretty strong feeling that there won't be sustained social unrest in the next 19 weeks. Key number 9, the incumbent administration is untainted by major scandal. Well, that's true. So major scandal is something like the Warren Harding Teapot Dome scandal. It's not Hillary Clinton's email issue yet. So that would be a true, and the certainty score might be on the likely. Not absolute, not strong, but that's not likely to change. Key number 10 is the foreign military failure key, which states that the incumbent administration suffers no major failure in foreign or military affairs. I think you can see where judgment starts to come into this. Because in the last term, the United States hasn't suffered a military defeat as defined by the model, like withdrawal from Vietnam in April of 1975. That is a true statement, according to the model. His certainty is uncertain. So he is less certain about this than any of the other keys thus far. So going into the last 3 keys, we're still at 4, if you're, depending on how you rate. So if you want Hillary Clinton to win, she cannot have a single additional F in a box. So the flip of key 10 is key 11, which is a foreign military success key. The incumbent administration achieves a major success in foreign or military affairs. So, The Iran nuclear deal, recognition of Cuba. Those are potential foreign policy successes. The model, incidentally, the model was authored by an historian and a Russian mathematician in 1981. So you could argue that in 1981 they could slant the model to predict the outcome of all the elections before 1980, but it's also predicted all of the outcomes since. He's not certain about this, and so you're free to put, as you were in any other key, to put whatever you would like. If you put an F, then there are 5 keys turned against the Democratic administration. Hillary Clinton is still safe.
We only have 4.
Well, people are doing them differently, so you may not have tracked. So I have Fs for 1, 2, 3, 7, and now 11. So that's 5. That's 5 keys. Hillary is safe. Number 12 is the incumbent charisma key. The incumbent party candidate is charismatic or a national hero. So you're talking about Hillary Clinton. I don't think you can give her that key. That's the 6th and fatal F. If you agree with what I've suggested, and it's certainly free not to. But if my lineup is correct, Donald Trump, unless something derails, will be the next president of the United States. Now, interestingly, had Bernie Sanders been the candidate, would you have given him that key? Would you have said that Bernie Sanders is charismatic? And so that would have stayed true, and he would win, unless we get the key 13. Key 13 is the flip. This is ask you to assess the challenger. Is the challenging party, it says in the negative, the challenging party candidate is not charismatic. So is Donald Trump not charismatic? If he's not charismatic, it's a T. If he is charismatic, it's an F. And it really doesn't matter what you said for key 12, because key 13, if you believe he is charismatic, is the 6th fatal F against the incumbent ruling party. How many of you believe that Donald Trump is charismatic? Go ahead. If you raise your hand, it doesn't mean you're going to vote for Donald Trump. I'm just asking you, do you believe Donald Trump is charismatic? Raise your hand.
Can you define charismatic before we raise our hand or don't raise it?
Sure. According to the model, charisma in recent political history is embodied by Bill Clinton and Ronald Reagan.
Right.
So, do you believe Donald Trump is charismatic? Raise your hand if you do. See, this is interesting for me because I believe he's charismatic. I can't think of anybody who is more charismatic. He's as charismatic as Ronald Reagan or Bill Clinton. He's not consistent. He's self-absorbed. There are all sorts of adjectives you can apply to him, but I think charismatic is one of them. However, the model author disagrees with me. He would have a T. He would say Donald Trump is not charismatic, and here's his reason. His negatives are so high. So yes, I think by street wisdom, you would think he's charismatic, but his negatives are so high. Ronald Reagan's charisma and Bill Clinton's charisma as candidates they were not associated with negative ratings. So then, that could be a T instead of an F, although at first blush, I was certain it was an F. Now, you run the whole table on the 13 keys, and you realize that this is a close election. There's not a clear-cut prediction here. So an interesting thought exercise, and I won't do this with you. You take your sheet back and do it yourself. Look back at those keys and see which of them you think could flip between now and the election. So keep in mind, if you're a Hillary Clinton fan and she has 6 keys turned against her, she's got to flip one of those keys without losing a key. So she's not going to become charismatic. She's not going to flip that key. She's not going to flip the keys that are factual statements, such as Barack Obama is not running for re-election. So where is the wiggle room? And by the same token, what the Republicans can't afford to lose a key that would favor the Democrats. So that's the perplexing quality of this year's election. And with that, I'll stop and try to respond to questions.